probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's up, y'all? I'm Bud Elliott. Summer school is back in session. Today, we are talking Kansas, and we are going to go to the source. That's PHOG.net. My man, Michael Swain. Mike, what's going on, dude?
Not too much, Bud. Enjoying the summer. You know, football season for KU fans can't come soon enough. It's as Lance Leipold has developed this program, summertime's become like, when is football coming? Whereas in the past, it was a little bit slower. So football for Kansas, definitely a source of a lot of interest right now.
So before we jump into personnel and talk about strength and weaknesses and all that stuff, can you kind of lay the landscape for the stadium situation for Kansas this year?
Yeah, totally. So they're in the middle of rebuilding the stadium. They tore down, it was more or less a horseshoe, and so they tore out basically 2/3 of it. And so all of it is standing right now is the east stand, and the rest of it is being rebuilt, and they're making good progress. They've also renovating the football facility, which they are hoping will be done for the start of the season. So for most of this year, the Kansas coaching staff has been at the track facility using those offices, and they're hoping they'll have their official facility back for the fall. But the stadium, it's coming along. You know, if you drive by it in Lawrence, the steel is up. You're starting to see things really start to build up now, and it's going to be a different situation for KU this fall. They're going to play their non-conference games at Children's Mercy Park, where Sporting Kansas City, the MLS team, play, and then they will play their conference games at Arrowhead Stadium, of course, where the Chiefs play. So it's going to be a really interesting season for the home atmosphere, because I think that was something that KU was really developing at David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, was a great home atmosphere. And now it's going to be a little bit different. I think the two games at Children's Mercy Park are going to be great. It's a soccer stadium. Everyone's going to be really on top of the field. That's going to be really cool. But then you're talking about Arrowhead, right? I believe 80,000 fits in there. Not sure if KU is going to be selling those games out, but I'll be fascinated to see what the crowd situation is like there, because I think there will still be some really large crowds for games there.
Absolutely. What does Children's Mercy hold?
I think it's in the 20s. I want to say, I haven't checked, but it's not going to be huge, but it's a decently sized stadium, and it will be a different atmosphere just because of how, like, on top of the field everyone feels.
It's a fascinating year for stadiums out there. Northwestern obviously renovating theirs as well right now, so they're playing like right on the lake. Good luck passing the ball with those wings right there. So it'll be fun to watch. Kansas was a lot of fun to watch last year, and really a team that showed great perseverance with quarterback going down and just kept winning. I was like, okay, this coaching staff is just pure magicians. Where, if anywhere, from your viewing, you're talking to your sources, where is this team clearly better than it was last year?
Well, I think every year you have an experienced offense that has players at key positions coming back, right? You look at Devin Neal, going to be one of the best running backs in college football next year. You've got Jaylen Daniels, who, when healthy, can be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And then you go to the wide receiver room, right? KU returns its top 3 wide receivers: Lawrence Arnold, Luke Grimm, Quentin Skinner. That's an area where you're talking about veteran guys that have now, most of them have been 3-year starters. And that's huge when you talk about experience, knowing how to be consistent, how to have yourself ready to play every single week. I think the offense is going to be able to take another step, even if there's a new face running it, right? Andy Kotelnicki's now at Penn State, and KU went and got Jeff Grimes. And I think one of the more interesting storylines of this offseason, Bud, has been that KU is not changing its offense. And that's something Lance Leipold told the players as soon as he hired Grimes, like, the Kansas offense that you guys know is going to be the same. We're just going to wrinkle some different things in from Grimes that he did at Baylor, and pass stops. Screen game is something they're going to add. They're going to do a lot more wide zone. But outside of that, I think the offense has a chance of taking another really big step, and I think a lot is going to hinge on the health of Jaylen Daniels.
Well, let's ask about that then. How healthy is Jaylen Daniels?
Pretty healthy. And look, it's a back injury, so you can – I think everyone's going to be crossing their fingers and knocking on wood between now and, December, because it was kind of a fluke injury last year where he suffers kind of the initial back injury in camp. And then the day of the Texas game, he re-aggravates it to a point where he basically goes back to square one and ends up missing the rest of the season. KU was really deliberate with their program with him during the offseason. The goal has been to get him ready for August and September in this season and not have him be ready to go full go in spring practice. So if you're like me and you're at practice for the first day of spring, you see Jaylen Daniels off to the side, not doing a lot, and you're like, oh my God, this is not good. And then you talk to Lance Leipold, he's like, look, we've got a plan. He's going to be ramped up. And that's what happened, where then you look at the spring game and he's out there getting 11 on 11 reps. So the progression for him has been positive. It doesn't seem like there's been any setbacks. And I think the goal is going to be to make sure that he is ready to go for the start of the season. And that may mean that they take a light for him at some points during training camp in August. Because for KU, like the quarterback depth is not going to be super proven like it was where you had Jason Bean last year, a guy that ended up really saving KU's season, where if it was a different quarterback, KU probably is going on to have a 9-win season. It's probably a lot different. So for KU this year, a lot's just going to be about making sure Jalon is ready to go every single week. And they're really taking a very delicate and deliberate approach to making sure he's ready, because it's just a back injury. And again, those are really hard to predict because it can flare up at any point and you don't know when that's going to happen.
All right. So when you look at these lists that like the national media put out, or even like the regional Big 12 media, when you look, who's a player that is not on the sort of preseason all Big 12 list that, you as somebody who covers practice, this guy is an all-conference type player.
Well, I think Lawrence Arnold's someone that at the wide receiver position, because KU has 3 wide receivers, if you want to count Trevor Wilson, you can as a 4th. The reps get split around, and the passing reps you're not going to have a 1,000-yard receiver at Kansas because of the way the offense works. But I think if you put Lawrence Arnold in a different scheme, Texas Tech maybe, where you're saying, hey, you are the dude, you're going to get ample receptions. Like he's someone that could be a first team all conference type wide receiver, not because he's going to go to the NFL, but because that's how steady he is, right? He's got great size, great length. He has a knack for making really big plays. If you go back and look at the Oklahoma game, it's his feel on on the 4th down that ends up getting KU all the way down the field and into the red zone in what ended up being the game-winning drive. So he's someone that I think isn't going to get a lot of attention this offseason, right? I think it's going to go to Jaylen Daniels and Devin Neal, rightfully so. Those are 2 studs. But I think Lawrence Arnold is definitely an underrated part of this offense and a guy that is really key just because of every single game. He's consistent. He does the same stuff. He's able to get open, and he's a big 3rd down target. And I think if you put him in a different offense, maybe where he is the number 1 guy getting a ton of targets, I think he could put up some huge numbers.
Who's a player that has not been a starter yet for KU, but you just have a lot of confidence that he is going to be a good player because you've seen him in practice so far?
I think Trevor Cardell, if he can stay healthy, I think the sky's the limit for him. Tight end for KU, losing Mason Fairchild, who has been really steady for KU over the last few years. Trevor Cardell is someone that behind the scenes has had all the talent in the world. You've seen it a couple times with flashes against Duke 2 years ago and a couple times last year. Staying healthy has been the issue for him. He can get banged up at times and that causes him to miss some games. But if he can stay healthy, I think KU can get great production from him because he's got the intangibles. He's got the size and the wiggle at the tight end spot to be able to make catches. And he has developed as a blocker, which KU needs in the way they do run the outside zone. So I think he's someone that hasn't had starting reps yet, but if he does stay healthy, I think he's another guy that can put up some really good numbers this year.
I assume the answer is receiver, but if it's not, but please let me know. What is the spot where Kansas can most afford to dip into its depth?
I think probably wide receiver, just because you're looking at the numbers and, you've got your top 3 that I mentioned, right? Trevor Wilson is a 4th, Doug Emillion, a former transfer from Minnesota, is a guy that's really gritty, loves blocking. He can make plays, but he's just not gotten a lot of targets. And then there's a rising redshirt freshman, Keaton Kubeka, from Westlake, who had a solid freshman season, got some reps in the BYU game, but then they decided to redshirt him, preserve the eligibility for long-term, right? The smart thing to do. But I think you look at the depth of wide receiver, and it's a spot where they can go a few deep. I think running back 2 could be one. Daniel Hishaw was able to make it through the full season last year for the first time in his college career. If Sevion Morrison can stay healthy, he's someone too that has shown it before that he's got the top end speed to make big plays. And they've got some freshman running backs too. Johnny Thompson, a redshirt freshman. Harry Stewart is a true freshman. He enrolled early. He was the talk of spring practice. He looked like a junior with how physically developed he was. So I think wide receiver, running back, those are the 2 spots where I think KU does have some really nice depth on offense.
What are the position battles that you are most looking forward to covering come fall?
Offensive line, but it's going to be really fascinating to watch because there are a lot of dominoes that are really going to determine how the rest of the line shakes out. It starts at center. KU goes out and gets Shane Bumgarner, the Remington Trophy winner from the Division II level, and they wanted him to come in and grab the starting job immediately. There's been some acclimation process. It's a guy that's moving to a new school. a new strength and conditioning program. It's a little bit of a different situation than Dominic Pooney a couple off seasons ago when he came in and everyone from the first practice was like, oh my God, this guy's a dude. It's just taken him some time. If he doesn't win the starting job, Michael Ford Jr. probably wins the starting job. KU's also involved with Bryce Foster, the Texas A&M transfer. I have no idea when this is going to go out, so that could be over, and KU may not have him. If they do have him, he'll probably start at center. If not, Michael Ford Jr. starts at center. And then you're looking at taking Ford from being one of the guard spots, and all of a sudden you got to dip into your reserves. And that's Kobe Baines probably starting at right guard, at left guard, and maybe Nolan Gorsuch, a guy that hasn't started college games before. Or it's Daryl Simmons, a guy that KU got from Iowa State, who has started games, but last season lost his starting job, went in the portal, and KU was able to get. And then left tackle, it's probably going to be Logan Brown, the former 5-star Wisconsin transfer. He had a slower acclimation process during his first year at KU, suffered a season-ending injury, but during spring practice, the word was that he was really starting to put it together. So, you're looking at Brown most likely being the left tackle, but I think everything for this offensive line revolves around the center spot. Can KU not have Michael Ford Jr. start at center so he can play left guard? That's a huge spot because if he is playing guard, you feel really good about it because you got two guards, right, that can back him up. You got the tackle depth, right, with Calvin Clements, a redshirt freshman who everyone's really high on long-term. You feel good about the depth there, but I think everything's going to revolve around center and who wins that job.
Defensively, where are the bright spots?
Well, I don't know if there's a more talented defensive backfield in the Big 12. And not counting stars, but counting legitimate college football production. Kobe Bryant is a 2-time first-team All-Big 12. It's the first guy at Kansas to do that since Aqib Talib. Like, we're talking about a guy that has incredible production, has made a ton of big plays. Last season, teams barely threw to him. Like, he has been really, really good. And on the other side, Melo Dotson has been thrown at a lot more. So you're probably, if you watch Kansas games, you're probably like, oh man, Dotson's really not that good. But then you look at his production, right? Last year, 2 pick sixes in back-to-back games. He's made big plays as well. So at corner, you feel really good. KU lost Kenny Logan at safety. He's a guy that's been around for a long time, but you replace him with someone like Marvin Grant, who I think is an upgrade athletically to Kenny Logan, and I think can tackle at the same rate. And then O.J. Burroughs at safety is back again. So I think you look at the defensive backfield, and there's a lot of strength there. And I think for KU, it's all going to revolve around the front seven, because when that defensive backfield has a good front seven in front of them, they've been a good defense. And you saw that through certain games last year where they're able to hold teams like Texas Tech and K-State to decent point totals. I think overall that defensive backfield should be really strong.
So among the teams that the various casinos have put out odds that really probably can't win the Big 12, Kansas gets 5 of those 6. The only real kind of sort of bottom feeder, if you will, that they don't get is Cincinnati, which seems to me like you get Daniels if he can stay healthy. I won't let you take that one. What needs to happen other than Daniels staying healthy for Kansas to capitalize on what looks to be kind of a gift of a schedule to my eye?
Yeah, it's a light schedule, bud. It's a really light schedule. And I think a lot of this season is going to revolve around the defensive end spot. Because you look at what KU has at linebacker, and it's about the same as last year. You lose Craig Young, which is a downgrade to whoever you have because he was really good. But Rich Miller is being replaced by Cornell Wheeler, who is probably a step up athletically and feel-wise. I think it could be a step up. But defensive end, if Austin Booker came back, bud, I'd be tabbing KU for college football playoff because I think they'd win the Big 12 because that's how good Austin Booker is. But losing him, it's put KU in a tough position because they went out in the portal and got a strong side defensive end in Dylan Woodkey. So you feel good about the strong side, right? You've got Woodkey and Jeremy Robinson, 2 guys that have been around the block in college football. They'll be available, and you feel good about the level. But the weak side defensive end spot, the spot that KU gets its pass rush from, is going to be really unproven. It's Dean Miller, a former JUCO transfer who has transformed his body this offseason. He was around 205, 210 this time last year. Now he's in the 225, 230 range. A lot's going to ride on him, and then it's going to ride on Bai Jobe, the Michigan State transfer, who is another kind of former blue chip high school prospect. But, he hasn't played a lot of college football, and he's still new in his football career. Like, he's still, I think, in year 4 or 5 of just playing football, period. Like, it's still a guy that's really raw. And so a lot's going to ride on those 2. And then KU's got 2 other blue chip true freshmen, and Takai Sprinkley, a 4-star from Texas, and then Deshaun Warner, a guy that I think everyone at 24/7 Sports was super high on last year, right? The sky's the limit for those 2 players, but you're talking about relying on true freshmen in the trenches, and you just don't know what you're going to get. right? I don't think anyone can sit here and say either one of them is going to be a star as a true freshman, where I think a lot of people would agree that they have the chance to be a star down the road. So for KU, I think a lot really does ride on the defensive end spot. How does Dean Miller play? Can PHOG take a huge step forward? If that happens, you feel pretty good about it because the rest of the defense has the ability to build off of that defensive line with the secondary, the safeties, and the linebackers. But again, it's all going to come down to how KU does in that front four.
If there's a guy that knows more about Kansas football, I haven't met him. Michael Swain, awesome job. PHOG.net is the place to go. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, bud, for having me on. Always enjoy it.